we welcome you, sir, for this discussion and thanking you for accepting the invite. Next, I would like to introduce who has been an immediate past president 2019 of National Scientific Body IITville. We welcome you, sir, for this expert panel discussion. We have with us Madam Dr. Pavitra Vani Patale. Madam is currently President IITville Telangana State as a senior dermatologist from Hyderabad. We welcome you, Madam, for this discussion. Would like to also welcome Dr. Mukesh Girdhar, sir, who is a senior consultant dermatologist from Max Hospital, Patparganj. And sir has been an immediate past national vice president at IITville and has been the active contributor in dermatology, be it in the national or international. We welcome you, sir. We also have with us Dr. S.B. Kavitha, madam, who is associate professor, Gandhi Medical College, Hyderabad. Welcome you, madam. Last, we have with us Dr. Abhishek Desar, who is an associate professor at Calcutta National Medical College, and he has been associate editor at IGD in Journal. We welcome you, sir. So, with this brief introduction, I will now request our moderator, sir, to take the session ahead. Over to you, sir. Dr. Manmohan, sir.
Nagaraj.
Sure, sir.
I request all the doctors who are participating, please mute your speakers. Nirmalya, once again mute all the speakers, and Dr. Manmohan. Kindly unmute yourself.
Muted.
Sir, you are muted. You have to unmute yourself on speak.
Lakshmi sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Dr. Bhumish, you can unmute yourself.
Before starting the session, I request Dr. PNR sir to say the sudden demise of our beloved Dr. Uma Shankar, which is a sudden unfortunate demise. It's really a great loss to our IITville. I request Dr. PNR sir to say a few words.
Doctor, unmute, please. Doctor, unmute. Dr. PNR sir, unmute your speaker.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir,
thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Bhumesh. Today is a very sad day. Of course, so many things happen which are not under our control. Dr. Uma Shankar has been a pillar of strength for IITville over years. He is a relatively young guy, just around 40. He did his MD dermatology from Mangalore under Dr. Ganesh Pai. Dr. Ganesh Pai has a lot of special words and good praise and a lot of affection for him. And he says even now that he was the best postgraduate he ever had in his very long career of 430 years. He was such a wonderful person and very, very gentleman to the core. And I was fortunate that while I was president, he was the honorary general secretary of IITville, and we did work together. Even while I was a president-elect, we did a good amount of job with Dr. Mukesh Girdhar, who is also on this panel. And we really started a new venture in IITville, which is IITville headquarters. And headquarters is a huge job. It is like buying a property worth about 8 crores plus and a lot of registration, and you know how much work it takes. Doing your own personal purchase, working for IITville, looking at all the angles, and he was a very, very meticulous and of course after that developing it, building it, constructing it. Apart from that, doing the daily course of IITville, He was really one of his efficient best, and he's also very, very adept at IADVL software, and he was running IADVL. He updated the whole IADVL website completely, and of course, he was there for all the general bodies. And in the last 6 months, of his tenure, I think from after May, I think from May to December, he was not particularly very well. He was not attending much, but he was a very person with a very closed personality. He only shares good things. He never used to share anything which is disturbing or bad with others. He never discussed his illness, not even to his closest of his friends like Raghunath Reddy, who are none of his colleagues, even Shashi Kumar. Nobody. He just used to say that I'm not well. I'll come back. And finally, in December, he told me that he would like to attend Dharmacon. He was there in Dharmacon. He was almost in a good shape. I thought, whatever be the issue, he came over that and over the hill, and now he is fine. He did conduct the general body because it is secretary who conducts general body, and he conducts general body with aplomb and very, very well. And he was there from morning to evening, and also he was there in the evening dinner time. And of course, after second and third day, he was not there. I thought maybe he was taking rest. But then, as recently as May 7th, May 9th, I called him. That is about 10 days before. And he didn't pick up the phone. And only after about a day, he just put a message. Please message me, sir. When I said, I just want to know how are you, he said, sort of, okay, sir, he said. He just put a word. And I said, okay, bhai, just wanted to talk to you. I wanted to know how you are. He said, okay, sir, thank you very much. And today, Dr. Raghunath Reddy informed all of us that he was in his last breath. Only today he let his friends come and see him. Till today, he was not even letting his friends come near him. And today he let Dr. Raghunath Reddy come to his hospital. He was there with him for about half an hour, and then he just wanted to just say hello to them. And then after half an hour, his breath became difficult. After 10 o'clock onwards, he was having a difficulty in breathing, and it seems he knew his end was near. He closed all the issues, financial and other things, and also told the doctors that he doesn't want ventilator support, and so he just passed away. He is a very brave person, very stoic and very gentle and upright and very sincere. He made IADVL proud, and he made IADVL richer by his contributions, not just financially, by more than one way. I think we are all going to miss him. Sorry for a long speech, but then I think he deserves this much and maybe much more, because he was a soldier who worked for IADVL at the state level as a state secretary, and then worked even ICSA as secretary, and then IADVL was for full term. Such a engaged, and of course, I was told that he is of course, his wife is there with him the last time, and he's got 2 sons. Both of them are in school, and I hope God, I wish God that they give them strength to withstand this serious calamity, and I hope he reaches the Divya Padam he deserves, and he is a very, very noble soul. So I think with that, I think I'll hand it over to Dr. Bhumesh.
Thank you, sir. So really, it's a great loss for the IADVL. So unrepairable, so sudden demise. So we'll pray for to God, may his soul rest in peace. Now I request the chairperson to continue. Manmohan, sir.
Sir, you can unmute and speak.
Manmohan sir, unmute.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So, good evening, everybody. I start the day with saying condolences, heartfelt condolences to the family of Umashankar. So, the really shocking news I just know in this webinar only. It's so unfortunate, such a dynamic person we lost from our association. I pray God that his soul rests in peace. So we'll go ahead with our program of urticaria, which is a very common problem which we all face find out, and is so vexing to the patient as well to the doctor to manage these urticaria patients. And there are also some special situations where, like in pregnancy, childhood, or lactating mothers, we have to modify our treatments to the requirement of the patient. So today's program will be around that. Umesh will give us a broad view of the urticaria that will be followed by our eminent panelists, Dr. Rao, Dr. Vani, Dr. Mukesh, Dr. Abhishek, and Dr. Kavita. And Umesh also will be the panelist after the talk. So we'll just discuss the common points that we generally face in our practice. So over to Dr. Umesh.
Yeah. Respected chairperson and the seniors, a very good afternoon. Really, it is today is a very sad day to us and to all IADVL. So, but we are in this juncture. So I will take not more than 10 or 15 minutes to talk about urticaria in children. The approach, mainly as you all know, urticaria is not a single disease. It is a reaction pattern to cutaneous mast cell degranulation, either maybe IgE mediated or non-IgE mediated. The lifetime prevalence of urticaria in children, which extends from 15 to 25%. As age increases, the incidence will increase, because the triggering factors which will come in contact the child, and that the incidence will increase. The pediatric urticaria has specific features and remains poorly understood, and the studies are also very limited. The isolated urticaria 85% and only angioedema 6%, and both 9% what we have done a study in our hospital. Whereas in other studies shows isolated one 78% and only angioedema 6% and both 15%. Whereas in adult, if you see 40% they are associated with both urticaria and angioedema. So that is a difference, because when urticaria is associated with angioedema, so it is our responsibility to look for any anaphylactic reactions or any severe complications. Acute spontaneous urticaria is the most common in childhood among all urticarias, and the viral infections are the common and most common triggers. About 2/3 of cases, they are self-limiting and they will be spontaneously resolved over a period of 6 to 8 weeks, but 1/3, 30% of acute urticaria may become chronic. So who are more prone for chronic, that we will discuss in the panel. By contrast, chronic spontaneous urticaria in children may be autoimmune, but more studies are needed. This one point I'd like to highlight: the stress is not only confined to the adult, even in the pediatric age group, especially in the school-going children, it is one of the important triggering factors that we need to highlight and we need to sensitize in this area also. Of course, the treatment is same like adult. Prognosis generally favorable in children. Coming to the management, the first step in evaluation is a history and the physical examination. Always I used to tell my PGs, the history is the king in the field of medicine. So try to spend a little bit time with the patient, so the patient will give a lot of clues in our diagnosis and differential diagnosis. Coming to the pediatric age group, acute urticaria, remember 5 I's. Idiopathic infections, infestations, ingestion, and injections. So food or infections or infestation, but remember 50% the cause is idiopathic. So our duty is whether it is a spontaneous or induced. So the differentiation of these two is very important, because even spontaneous urticarias, almost 40% they may be associated with the physical urticarias. 90%, so these big nines are responsible for 90% of food is a culprit in urticaria, remaining all 10%. And the timing is very, very important. If it is occurs within 1 hour, always remember, think of physical urticarias, 1 to 2 hours contact urticaria, whereas within 24 hours, the ordinary or spontaneous urticaria and arterial vasculitis more than 24 hours. So remember, continuous exposure to triggers is one of the important factor responsible for chronicity of urticaria. And the wheal size is also very important. If they are larger, that indicates the severity of the disease. And color is also very important. Light color indicates involvement of the skin, whereas dark or oilish color involvement of blood vessels. So to assess the severity, urticaria severity score based on less than 20 number mild, 20 to 50 moderate, more than 50 the severe. Like the pruritus, mild, moderate and severe, so that we will discuss in the panel. This small, we have done a study with 100 patients. The lowest age is 7 months, male to female ratio is 56 to 44, and the first 71% presented with first episode. And the most common age group 52% between the age group of 1 to 6 years. Whereas urticaria 85% presented with only urticarial wheals. Our angioedema is 6 and 9% associated with both. And based on the severity urticarial number and the itching mild, moderate, severe, those who presented with early presented with mild, and the delay gives rise to the release of histamine mediators and response for moderate to severe. And people will think that urticaria in children is only acute urticaria, but the 11% is not small number, huge. 11% even in pediatric age group there is a chronic spontaneous urticaria. In that we have seen the cholinergic, aquagenic or chronic spontaneous urticaria. So this chronic urticaria spontaneous no dermographism. So when you see chronic urticaria, always to do for the dermographism, because almost 30 to 40% may be associated with inducible urticarias. This patient aquagenic, whenever they go, this baby goes to washroom, and there is a development of this urticarial itchy erythematous rash. And we started with a non-sedative antihistaminic before 1 hour before going to a bath. Then now the lesions were subsided, no recurrences, the baby is going to the school regularly. Even this another child, whenever the history of sweating, they used to develop small itchy pinpoint papillar lesions. That is a characteristic feature of cholinergic urticaria, unlike urticarial wheals. Urticarial wheals may not be present in cholinergic urticaria. And within 5 to 10 minutes, all lesions will subside. And if you see the cause, idiopathic, almost 40% idiopathic and 59% is underlying cause. In that, the infections are common triggering factors. In the infections, upper respiratory tract infection stands first. The management is straightforward. There are only 2 steps. Identify the triggering factors and, if possible, eliminate. And the symptomatic therapy till lesions subsided. Once the mast cell which is activated, the activity remains for at least for 6 to 12 weeks. Till that time, we need to suppress the release of mediators from the mast cells, because a mast cell which is a master cell in the urticaria. I won't go in detail. So these are the doses. The prognosis, of course, favorably good in the pediatric age group. Mortality depends on another important, atopy has to be ruled out, because in acute urticaria, atopy is one of the important predictor responsible for the chronicity of the disease. The principles, first is whether it is inducible or spontaneous, because the inducible urticarias, they may not respond with the conventional dose of antihistaminic. That is one point, and generally it occurs in young age. This all we will discuss in the panel discussion of dosing in the children's. And the quality of life is very much affected. Almost it is because of variability of disease severity, and individual approach is necessary, very important. Individual approach, patient-centric approach is very, very important. The majority of patients, they respond with a non-sedative antihistaminic. Only few groups, they are required for updosing or steroids or cyclosporin. That we will discuss in the panel. Thank you very much. Over to Dr. Manmohan.
Thank you, Dr. Bhumesh, for a good bird's eye view presentation of the urticaria. Now, I invite all the panelists to please join me. So first, let us go to the first question. Dr. Narasimha Rao can take it. Generally, how do you feel incidence of urticaria in children?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Manmohan. Yeah. I can't really come out with figures, but I think it is quite not very uncommon, quite common in our practice. But maybe many pediatric patients with urticaria probably go to pediatricians In the first instance, probably that's one reason. Probably as dermatologists, we see them little less. They only come to us when the problem becomes little chronic or unmanageable. Maybe maybe after a week or so. So, but I feel in India, still, I think one of the commonest causes for urticaria in children could be infection or infestation. Secondly, I feel probably one of the other reasons could be then the medicines they take for various other reasons. But I would say that it's fairly common, and as a dermatologist, one should be well versed with the management of urticaria and also the dosage schedules for children of the antihistamines. Thank you.
So then we'll go to Dr. Mukesh. Mukesh Girdhar, you are able to hear me, sir?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Yeah. We'll talk about the infections, as Umesh has already said that viral infections are the more common and bacteria are less likely to cause this urticaria. What is your view about this infection, bacterial, viral, and any other infection which trigger this, like H. pylori?
Yeah, so we know that in pediatric age group, in the small children, smaller the child, more chances of viral infection being a cause of the urticaria, unless we are dealing with the NSAIDs or antibiotics and all. Amongst the viruses, respiratory viruses are the more common, like the influenza virus or the adenoviruses. These are common viruses which can cause urticaria. Now, we were talking about the incidence. I just wonder, various studies show the incidence to be 15 to 20% in the pediatric age group, and the lifetime incidence is 25%. So that means most of us would have had urticaria in the childhood, but somehow I don't agree with these studies which show the incidence as 15 to 20% in small children. But anyway, it's a common problem. We come across urticaria as a routine in children also, but definitely much lesser than in adults. And the commonest cause is the virus infections. And in the virus infections, it is the throat infections which are the commonest. The presentation wise also, these children may have more florid looking picture, but they do respond to the treatment very well. Many a times the doctors want to give steroids to the children. I am wary of that because we know the commonest cause is virus. So we should be avoiding giving steroids in the acute episodes of urticaria, because when the patient comes to you, there are two parents also with the patient, and they are worried. They are really a worried lot looking at the picture of that acute urticaria, the acuteness of it. Sometimes we see even hemorrhagic lesions also in acute urticaria. So the picture is very florid. So we need to counsel our patient very well and explain well. This is how it's going to take time, maybe a week's time before the urticaria settles down. Abhishek wanted to say something.
Sir, basically there's a meta-analysis. Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, we are able.
Yeah. So there's a meta-analysis which was done in 2018-19 actually. So that suggests about childhood prevalence of urticaria, acute and chronic both put together is 3 to 5%. Different country has different thing, but it's somehow between 3 to 5%. So it may not be that high. The newer data what suggested.
Is the Italian publication.
No, from Italy also there's a publication is there. Other part is like some like Sweden is it goes about to 5.4%. In Italy it's about 3.4%. So somewhere between 3 to 5% the number is. So previously whatever we have the data, now the recent data suggests it's much less than that the earlier data. That's one part of the thing, and majority of them are basically in acute urticaria segment. Chronic urticaria is comparatively less.
Yes, and I also agree with Dr. Mukesh. See, they say almost 70 to 80% of the general population must have had urticaria sometime or other in their lives. This is very common statement. Most of us we had urticaria sometime or other. They say, as you said, Dr. Mukesh, that it is.
It's about 25%, sir.
A chronic one.
1 in 4 people would have had urticaria in their life, actually.
Yeah. And then Abhishek, can you throw some light on these biomarkers for these urticarias?
May I add something, Dr. Manmohan?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Infections will come.
Yeah.
May I add something regarding infection?
Please.
Yeah, I think the other bacterial infections also have been known. Streptococcal throat infection, one thing. And I have had some cases where intestinal giardiasis was detected. And it's also been known that focal infections also can show urticaria. For example, maybe a dental abscess or UTIs or gastroenteritis, even if it's whether there's direct correlation or not, but sometimes they can present with urticaria without the overt signs of the focus of infection. So we should be a little more aware, and also typhoid cases presenting with urticaria. So just stresses the point of not using steroids, especially if there are any systemic manifestations.
Yeah, this parasitic infestation, what you're talking, that European guidelines and American guidelines don't accept this, but still, I think from our Indian side, we have made it, it may be required in developing countries to do a stool test before we. But there are analysis evidences that there is not much of relief once you treat worm infestation. The urticaria intensity in CSU especially is not likely to change much.
Right. Some patients respond with 2 doses of anti-helminthic treatment for quite some time. They don't require antihistamines. It has happened. So I think there is a role we can't totally deny. Stool examination doesn't help, but it's worth considering.
Do you
See,
advocate?
I take it like this, sir. I take it like this, that urticaria may have been precipitated by a helminthic infestation, but it goes into the autopilot mode. You treat the worm infestation, that gets all right, but the urticaria doesn't get all right. So it's both ways. It may be an etiological factor, but then it goes into the autopilot mode kind of a thing.
So Abhishek, can you throw some light on the these markers, biomarkers like D-dimers and other things what they talk about? Any one of you can take this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can just point out because in there are a lot of biomarkers which is being studied in adult urticaria, much less so in childhood urticaria. There's not much of data in since we are talking about pediatric urticaria, data is really flimsy. However, there are certain things which have been shown to be associated with urticaria, prolongation of urticaria, like chances of urticaria being really chronic and lasting it for a long period of time, and possibly a little bit of non-responsive to standard dose of antihistamine. There are certain things that are suggested. Like one of them in children is especially it's important is association with atopy. That has been shown to be very strongly associated. And other things which is about some patients, about 30% of the patients may have, even in children, may have autoimmunity. Now, for the autoimmunity, there are a lot of markers which has been suggested. So one of them is you can do it like we have been doing autologous serum skin test. That can be a very simple way of doing things. Some lab data which has come. One of them are like antibodies against epsilon receptor against then there's a certain CD marker which is CD63 and about 203. These two anti-CD markers are also can be a marker of autoimmunity associated with urticaria. These things can show us that possibly the urticaria can last for longer periods. Similarly, as you already mentioned, D-dimer, that's also has found, but more D-dimer studies has been done in adult than in children.
So then, yeah, anything you want to add, Dr. Vani?
Yeah, I think raised CRP and interestingly, they said raised MVP, mean volume, platelet volume, and reduced basophil counts. These may be indicators of prolonged urticaria.
Basophil activation time.
Basophil histamine release test they do.
No, that's the count they gave, because what's available to us as routine, these three I've found. There are about 10 markers which are given, which are high flown, which we can't routinely do. So I think the CRP and these counts we routinely do anyway. So.
And even IgG anti-TPO antibodies are also been estimated. They have actually marked.
That is also rule out thyroid and celiac disease also is quite common in children.
Lakshminarayana, take care of the background. And the tryptase levels are the tryptase levels also very important to assess the activity of the disease. And the eosinophilic count, the more the raising level of eosinophilic count indicates the in organ severity. The IgE levels is not shows only atopy, but it will not prove that it's allergy.
So, Dr. Bhumesh, do you think that we should always do IgE in cases of chronic spontaneous urticarias?
Generally not required. In the role of atopy in chronic urticaria almost very negligible. Only in acute urticaria there is a chances of 20% the atopy may be associated. Any children who is acute urticaria is coming with recurrences, always we have to rule out atopy, because which is one condition responsible for continuation of acute into chronic.
But only thing is, maybe sometimes treatment giving omalizumab also may be dependent on IgE levels.
No, the omalizumab related to IgE levels will not help. Is not for acute urticaria. It is omalizumab is only for chronic urticaria.
Chronic urticaria.
Yeah.
Chronic urticaria. Doctor.
That to refractory chronic urticaria, omalizumab may work.
We have given omalizumab in chronic urticaria in one child. That is not child, adolescent, 17 years. 3 doses was given, but in spite of that omalizumab, the maintenance of non-sedative antihistaminic has to be continued.
Any one of you can please take this question, whether LFT as a routinely in the first visit is required or not?
No.
No. Anybody who says yes in the panel?
No, I before now in my mind. I think the only place where I would do is the child present or anybody presents with urticaria and fever. I would like to do, because it can be an early indication of hepatitis. Otherwise, I don't
indicate some hepatitis A, B, C, or what a non-A, non-B, or also enzymes, SGOT, SGOT. Use an antihistaminic for the, because otherwise the patient may after the tablet land up with abnormal LFT for some other reason and then attribute it to the medication. So we may get an idea, because it's not a very expensive test. This was decided upon in the guidelines doing an LFT in the initial stages. Do you agree, Dr. Abhishek?
Actually, there's a, I mean, if you see the guidelines, it's possibly they don't mention, but Dr. Shandipan categorically tells, because he sees a lot of pediatric patients, he says he does LFT in all patients, because if sometimes LFT goes high later, the patient may come back and say, parents may come back and say, possibly because of your medicine, this LFT has gone out. So they had to show that baseline also has been high. So this is more of a practice tips, but generally in pathogenesis of the urticaria, possibly not related.
Yeah, can I add, Dr. Manmohan? Dr. Narasimha here.
Yeah.
Can I add? Okay. Yeah. See, many times, especially now, when you are called to see the pediatric patient, if you are on a call, generally the patient is admitted already. So if it is patient is coming to your clinic, then probably it's a different issue. It's a chronic urticaria probably. But when you go for a acute urticaria where admitted patients, especially Dr. Sandeepan there, in a hospital setting, or when you go to a clinic to pediatric hospital to see a patient, so then the patient is definitely very, very acutely having severe urticaria with all the systemic symptoms associated. Such patients definitely, I feel that we should do LFT. So in putting it other way, unlike in chronic urticaria, probably acute severe urticaria in children, more than 2 days or 3 days, I think we should warrants evaluation of CBP, CBC and other things, including liver enzymes. Yeah.
Yes. Then next I'll go to Dr. Bhumesh. Can you please tell us the role of NSAIDs and pseudoallergens in the pediatric urticaria? Because they give lots of NSAIDs in the pediatric practice. So how is going to affect the urticaria part of it?
The role of drugs in acute urticaria, especially in pediatric age group, is very minimal. If you ask me, the first 6 months, the viral infections will dominate. 6 months to 2 years, the food components may take part. After 2 years, the aeroallergens will come into the picture. and the pseudo allergens in the form of drug to suspect any urticarial rash which is bright erythema associated with severe itching. In those conditions, that drug could be a culprit.
So generally pediatricians do use NSAIDs, so we have to little caution them when the child has acute urticaria episodes to avoid.
2 years aspirins are not indicated.
Yeah.
NSAIDs,
Now NSAIDs and aspirin even in pediatricians they are minimized, only except paracetamol they are not giving. Previously they used to give.
It's also part of many foods, so that may be one aspect also which we.
Food after 6 months, food is one of the important component.
Amongst the drugs, can I say something?
Yeah, please, sir. Please.
Yeah, I see a lot of pediatricians' prescription where they give a lot of Flexon, I mean, ibuprofen combinations to the patients, and they are very commonly aggravating factor in that acute urticaria. May not be the cause, but then they are definitely aggravating factor. They are there. So I don't know in your part of the country, maybe people use only paracetamol. I see a lot of prescriptions of combination of paracetamol with ibuprofen.
Yeah, previously they used to give 10 mg per kg of paracetamol. Now it has increased to 15 mg per kg of paracetamol per dose. So that is covering the antipyretic and anti-inflammatory activity.
Dr. Kavita,
yes,
hello.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Please indicate some conditions which look like acute urticaria, but they are not mimickers.
Like mastocytosis.
Yeah.
Urticarial vasculitis. You can know. Connective tissue disorders. Actually, they also may have. And thyroid disorder, the Hashimoto's thyroiditis. These are few conditions where we can also, in case if the child is presenting with urticarial lesions, and if you go deeper into the history and going into the systemic evaluation, we need to put up into these DDs and look for those things.
Apart from that, we can entertain EMF lesions. Even the common tinea infections, tinea corporis also will come into the picture in common differential diagnosis. Insect bite reactions, contact urticarias, these are common conditions. Sometimes rare conditions are like auto-inflammatory syndromes, Sleep-Berg syndromes is very rare where they severe urticaria associated with severe constitutional symptoms. In those conditions, we have to think beyond the skin. Like connective tissue disorders or any other auto-inflammatory syndromes.
Sometimes hemorrhagic edema, acute hemorrhagic edema also may mimic edemas. Then Bhumesh, as you mentioned infection, we are also seeing urticarial lesions along with tinea corporis cruris. So how it may be related or is just a coincidental?
Even nowadays the tinea also, it is one of the responsible for in the differential diagnosis. Not only that, it is responsible for the triggering factors of acute tinea, acute urticaria, as well as responsible for chronicity of urticaria. In 3 ways we can entertain, because
they have found a positive reaction to trichophytin at some point of time, but they're not sure whether that's a causative agent for urticaria. In tinea, trichophytin testing was positive in some of these patients.
But that is type 4 reaction. Type 4. So that will be delayed hypertension.
So there is a paper actually that suggests, I think Dr. Vijay Jaya's paper, that suggests that dermatophytes infections were there and with urticaria, and when we treated dermatophyte infection, the urticaria itself has gone. So there is some suggestion has come in recent 3 years that there can be some. I think it's a paper of Dr. Vijay Jayar. One publication was there regarding this.
Had any of us in the people sitting in the panel has seen a case who has dermatophytosis with urticaria? You treat dermatophytosis and urticaria disappears. In my experience, there are some patients with dermatophytosis who have more like edematous plaques rather than urticaria lesion. It's an edematous plaque of dermatophytosis itself. And it will be interesting to know that somebody has dermatophytosis and a distant lesion of urticaria, and you treat dermatophytosis and the urticaria also disappears completely. It hasn't happened in my experience, but others can also, guide us.
I would like to say something, if Manmohan permitting. Okay, if you look at the urticaria, if you look at the table of Gel and Coombs classification of type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, generally we believe that urticaria is a type 1 type of hypersensitive reaction. But again, if you look at the table carefully, it occurs in type 2 cytotoxic reactions. It also occurs in serum sickness reactions, which is a drug-induced reactions, as well as insect bites and tick reactions. And also it is known to occur in type 4 hypersensitivity, which could be because of, candidin or trichophytin. And we all know that fungus infections sometimes can cause EAD reactions. So EAD eruption like that, which can have an urticarial component. So, but to say that a florid urticaria occurring from head to toe can be because of a groin infection. Itchy skin, maybe occasional wheal here and there can occur because of any probably dermatitis anywhere on the body. This is my opinion. But in a florid case of acute urticaria occurring in such conditions is rather rare.
See, in my this thing, let me have a small comment. In my opinion, when I treat patients with extensive fungal infection, some of them do develop urticarial lesions during the treatment. So I get a suspicion whether it is the itraconazole which is causing that, and stop that and change over to terbinafine, the urticarial part is taken care. So maybe some drug eruptions also may come up during our treatment, also should be kept in mind, apart from the EAD kind of eruptions.
Can I say something on this, sir?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, we have seen patients developing rash to itraconazole, especially on the proximal thighs, lower abdomen, and the around the armpits. And we have related it to itraconazole, and discontinuation of itraconazole has helped these patients. So, I mean, having a true association of urticaria and treating, urticaria and dermatophytosis, and treating dermatophytosis, curing urticaria, I will want to know more about it in case that happens.
Sir, regarding the differential, sir. Regarding the differential, sir, I think we need to also think about papular urticaria, which can sometimes mimic like urticarial rashes. We have to think about scabies because sometimes urticarial people give an history, we cannot see the lesions. So those are the things also you have to keep in mind. And also cutaneous small vessel vasculitis. Sometimes that also can mimic like urticarial lesions.
And it is as well. I think on the whole, otherwise, it may not be the severity in any chronic persistent, even if it is not very severe, it points to, I think it helps to look at any focus of infection. Maybe that's what it means. Just a quick examination wouldn't harm.
No, but scientifically, see, we were all taught there is a tooth infection somewhere, urticaria, you remove the tooth, it will improve there. But scientifically, evidence should be there for us to.
Clinically, I've had a few clear chronic urticaria with removing areas to focus.
Right. We'll, I think, go to the management part of it. We're a little late now. Acute urticarias, most of the time they go to pediatricians, they'll manage them. But when they come to dermatologists, how are we supposed to manage? Dr. Giridhar.
Yeah. What I feel is that antihistamines are, first of all, they are metabolized faster by the small children, and they need more dose of antihistamine to control their urticaria. That's what my experience is. So giving antihistamines is good enough in majority of patients of acute urticaria. The only thing is, if, as we say, that viral infection is the cause, the virus is going to take its own time, so urticaria is also going to take its own time. So we have to counsel the parents very well about it, that it's not going to happen in a day or two. It may take 5 to 7 days time before the urticaria resolves. And it generally resolves with the antihistamines only.
Suppose, there is an associated angioedema.
Yeah. So that has to be ascertained. So many of these children have associated angioedema, but this angioedema is also generally histaminergic. So they do respond to antihistamines only. As I said, looking at the severity of urticaria, many a times steroids are prescribed, which perhaps to my mind are unnecessary, because if the child has a virus infection, then we may actually be doing a disservice to the child.
Right. Okay, I think in that case, adrenaline is what is indicated. They have also mentioned that adrenaline you can use sometimes if you're doubtful whether it is urticaria or some lookalike things. Adrenaline will definitely clear the match. That's one thing I've read somewhere. But that's the drug of choice for acute urticaria with angioedema.
Clinically, Abhishek, how do you differentiate whether it is urticaria of anaphylaxis or urticaria, acute urticaria due to some other cause? Do you have any?
I mean the problem. It's when acute urticaria with angioedema comes, then we need to, or rather angioedema is the predominant symptoms of the arterial palpitation. Then we need to have to differentiate with anaphylaxis more. But the best important thing to check the vitals. Blood pressure, if goes low, is a hugely in favor of anaphylactic syndrome. The onset is very acute. So anaphylaxis is an emergency. I mean, that has to be taken care like that one. Angioedema patient never have the vitals unstable. So we have the time, we can settle the patient with normal sort of medications.
Clinically, they may present with wheezing or the stridor. These symptoms also, and also if you look into tachycardia, even the pulse.
That's it. Vitals are very important. Both blood pressure and pulse.
Yeah. Anaphylaxis, cold, clammy skin, and then hypotension and all the other things which are there. And in those situations, definitely adrenaline should be very handy.
But when you see, sir, can I add one point?
Yeah.
When you see acute urticaria in a pediatric age group, it is a responsibility of healthcare provider to rule out whether the acute urticaria is associated with any anaphylaxis. For that, the examination of the skin is, along with that, always you ask the child any history of difficulty in breathing. That's one point. And even being a dermatologist, we have to auscultate the lungs because any spasm. So these are the two important clues to assess whether this acute urticaria is associated with anaphylaxis or not, because 20% of acute urticarias may be associated with anaphylaxis. So these two important, one symptom and one sign, always we have to look for.
Right, that is well taken, Umesh. And then Dr. Narasimha, generally chronic urticarias in childhood, how do you proceed to manage? Your personal
I think, fortunately, I feel the management of chronic urticaria in children is not entirely different from that of adults, except that we are giving different, probably smaller dosages. And the only thing is, sometimes there is always a role of a sedating antihistamine, I feel, even though the present thought and the present emphasis by many of the pharma companies is to avoid sedative antihistamines. Probably we have a role of giving a nighttime 8-hour acting sedative antihistamines in a childhood. Otherwise, I feel the management of a chronic urticaria in childhood and adult, as far as I am concerned, probably is not very different.
You have to give a combination of the first and second generation antihistamines.
Yeah, I would like to give probably something like a cetirizine syrup in the morning, daytime, and probably giving a chlorpheniramine or something like polaramine or hydroxyzine syrup at night. Yeah.
And then suppose it becomes chronic and then we may have to take him off first generation antihistaminics. Do you have ever had a chance of developing 3-fold, 4-fold increase in the dosage in one of you in the childhood?
Yeah, you're asking me, So yeah, naturally. So sometimes it does happen. So a person takes for more than I'll write this generally duration with the chronic urticaria where it is control with the medication I have given. I'll continue for about, ask them to not to start the medication immediately the moment they see the urticaria is going down, because it will happen many times that the child shows improvement within first 24 to 48 hours, and they stop it and again they get it back and they panic again. Rather, they should continue it for minimum 2 weeks time. maybe 2 to 3 weeks time. If the patient is not still responding and able to wean off, then probably I'll think of, and there is difficulty with a sedating antihistamine, I like to start on a second non-sedating antihistamine of a different group, such as fexofenadine. So I'll rather add sometimes, rarely, as we all know, cetirizine, if you give in higher doses, it can be as sedating, can be sedating as well. So probably I'll go to some drug like fexofenadine. But why I started with cetirizine is still I find that cetirizine is the #1 effective drug for all kinds of urticaria.
Cetirizine or levocetirizine?
No, I feel cetirizine or levocetirizine is more effective compared to fexofenadine in all urticarias, at least in my experience.
Abhishek, can you just comment about rupatidine used in children, chronic urticarias?
Sir, rupatidine, I didn't get the question, sir. Rupatidine in children, sir?
Is much better than the other antihistaminics in the childhood. Do you agree?
No, sir, I don't agree, because there's only one randomized control trial, rupatidine versus desloratadine, and that RCT shows that between desloratadine and rupatidine, there's no difference. Other than that, it's a pediatric pediatricians' belief more than we have any data to suggest something like that. All second generation antihistaminics are safe, and most of them, except for fexofenadine, are approved beyond 2 years of age. It's a desloratadine which is approved from 1 year of age, and fexofenadine which is approved from 6 years of age. However, the drugs has been used below that also. Approval status varied.
Sir, then about suppose if the patient is not responding, we have to go to the next step of using some biologicals. In children, generally, what is the effect of this omalizumab or cyclosporine, whichever is preferable in this child group of 6 years to 12 years or beyond?
For me, sir,
you are not here.
Should I answer that?
No, but before we take that, I think Dr. Abhishek answers that. I would like to know how many of us actually have experience of using a biologic in chronic urticaria. Use of omalizumab. What is the frequency? I mean, to look at a random in a 100 dermatologists or about 1,000 dermatologists, we can say how many would be using omalizumab, and what will be the experience in Indian scenario?
Very less.
Dr. Bhumesh, especially in pediatrics.
Very less, sir. But one thing I would like to enlighten here, any antihistaminic almost is the same. So which is superior, which is inferior. It is that depends on the physician is confident with his drug. But the thing is, once the mast cell which is activated, the activity of the irrespective of the triggering factors, whether it's the infections or whatever it may be, the activity of the mast cell release the degranulation pro-inflammatory mediators, which will remain minimum over a period of 6 to 12 weeks. It is high time to sensitize everybody. At least till that time, we need to give antihistaminic to suppress the activity of the mast cells. That is one thing. Second point, always you have to look for any triggering factors. If possible, eliminate it. And
no, sorry to interrupt you, but you say you should give for a minimum of 6 weeks?
I will give minimum of 6 weeks for all acute urticarias to prevent the recurrence of acute urticaria. Okay. That is my personal experience.
Sorry, 6 weeks of?
Any acute urticaria, once acute urticaria is there, irrespective of the triggering factors, the activity of mast cell which persists for minimum over a period of 6 to 12 weeks. So, but I will follow for 2 weeks. If no recurrence with 2 weeks, again I will continue for another 2 weeks. Then I will reduce the dose for the last 2 weeks. Then over a period of 6 weeks, I will stop. Any recurrence is there, I will continue for 12 weeks.
You're talking about the antihistamine, sir, or the
yes, antihistaminic, only antihistaminic.
The point is, he's talking about acute urticaria.
Yeah.
Omalizumab is not indicated in acute urticaria. It is for chronic urticaria.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to know. How many of us have had experience with omalizumab? And
Madam,
because of the cost factor and even the side effects.
Montelukast, and in children, it especially is found to be beneficial to combine antihistamine with montelukast, leukotriene inhibitors.
Yes, leukotriene inhibitors are of not much use unless there may be some history of asthma atopy in the child. But otherwise, they say it is proved to be.
Yes. History of atopy in urticaria, the leukotriene has a role.
Yes, sir. Sir, omalizumab I have used, sir. In adult, I have used a lot. In children, more than 12 years I have used, but below 12 years, I usually prefer cyclosporine. If I have to give something beyond antihistamine, then I prefer cyclosporine because for atopic dermatitis, we use cyclosporine a lot. We have the courage, and omalizumab is not approved till now below 12 years for urticaria. So I keep omalizumab in the adolescent period, kids like I have given for 14 years, 16 years, but not below 12 years.
How much dose did you give, Dr. Abhishek, and for how long?
For adults, I give for 300 milligram, but kids usually I start with 150 milligram.
Once in a month?
Once in a month.
Once in a month, yes.
3 months or 6 months?
See,
3
I
doses.
tell the patient, okay, at least 6 months I have to give. However, many times cost constraints are also come, and patients, if symptomatically get improved, then that's how we have been suggested, like we can increase the interval rather than given every 4 weeks. I give 6 and 7 weeks. It's not quite bookish, but that's how we have been practicing to reduce the cost.
And the patient is along with also is on antihistaminics.
Antihistaminic I always keep the antihistaminic because finally my job is to maintain with antihistaminic if the patient is in chronic urticaria, because omalizumab for Indian patient taking for long period of time may not be very feasible or viable option.
Right. Thank you. Then Dr. Mukesh, can you take up this narrowband UVB treatment in case of urticarias? Do you have any experiences?
Yeah. So I do have a narrowband UVB phototherapy facility in my clinic, but I don't use it in chronic urticaria. The reason is very simple, sir. Yeah. Coming to the clinic twice or thrice a week in Delhi's traffic is a major practical problem. And I don't use it even in adults also, even though I know it can work, but I have not tried it.
Right. But there are some reports of some being tried, but some control groups said there is not much of improvement.
Yeah. So the reports are there, but they are, sometimes they show there is some value of narrowband UVB, but I don't think narrowband UVB is going to do anything great to the chronic urticaria, which I cannot do with the drugs. And so talking of the omalizumab, I'll come back to what Dr. Narasimha Rao said. About 5% of the patients amongst the children, 5% of children having urticaria, and then amongst them less than 10% having chronic urticaria, and below 12 years omalizumab is not approved anyway. So the remains cyclosporine. So the drug remains cyclosporine always.
Then about anybody has an experience of trying doxepin?
No.
Not in
doxepin.
No. Not in children.
Sometime back it was available in the market, but I doubt whether we heard it last about 10 years back. After that, I don't think it is much promoted or available in the market.
Because I don't use it in extremes of ages either way, neither in the pediatric age group nor in the pediatric age group. Yes. In the middle portion, yes, it can be used as 10 milligram HS dose, maybe to cause sedation. And of course, antihistamine activity is there.
Probably anti-anxiety for that effective.
Yeah. Nowadays, there is a lot of stress, as Umesh also pointed. There are studies which say a pediatrician, psychologist, and dermatologist should be there to treat a case of chronic urticaria in children. So that much of stress is also involved in various ways. So things like, of course, this doxepin is a kind of anti-tranquilizing. So that is some use in some situations when there is extreme involvement in the stress.
Maybe to the parents, I think.
Really, it is also true. Yeah. Because unless you control the parents, it's very difficult to treat the child.
No, they say you give anything, but don't give steroids.
So I'll follow with the M square, medicine and mother. So unless you involve the parents or mother, it's off treatment in pediatric age group.
Who better than Bhumesh to tell this thing, a pediatrician and dermatologist combination? He knows how to tackle the parents actually.
Follow M square.
M square. So, Bhumesh, do you also, or any one of you can take this H2 receptor antagonists which are given along with it? Do you really find any relief anywhere? And if it is, with what drug generally you prefer?
In pediatric age group, I didn't find any role of, it is not required for me in the pediatric age group. In adults, occasionally I used to give the ranitidine because the skin 85% will H1 receptors and 15% associated with H2 receptors. Those who are not responding with this H1 receptors, only in few cases we can go with associated with any acid peptic disorders. This is another important option.
Then in case, children also we can...
has one more indication. We use it in dermographism because the flare response is affected by the ranitidine, not with the H1 antihistamines.
Right.
Yes.
So we use in special situations. And then what about things like colchicine, hydroxychloroquine, which are being mentioned as adjuvants? So any one of you can take this.
I have been using in my adult patients hydroxychloroquine, and I see some patients getting benefited with the hydroxychloroquine. But it's a weaker drug as compared to the rest of the drugs which we use like cyclosporin or omalizumab is the epitome anyway. But hydroxychloroquine I do use in adult patient, but I don't use in pediatric age group.
This is a question to any. Yeah, Narasimha. Yeah, Narasimha. You want to say something?
Sir, unmute cheyandi.
Mute.
As we are becoming senior citizens now, and with practice over 20-30 years time, we start getting all complicated cases. And now at my age, when a patient of urticaria comes, and they also have other comorbidities, not just internal but also cutaneous, maybe a leg eczema or a venous ulcer, maybe a tinea cruris, or could also be SLE. So now I have stopped thinking that urticaria is a standalone condition. Many a times urticaria in our practice, even in our busy practice, sometimes it could be one of the co-constituents of many other dermatosis, because as I said previously, it can be part of any type of type 1 to type 4 hypersensitivity reaction. So many times we have to be very careful that don't pass off every urticaria as just urticaria, but just look beyond and behind it for the underlying cause.
In fact, in the American guidelines, they have advised ANA also as a apart from thyroid, ANA also they advise in American guidelines for the treatment of chronic urticaria.
Yeah, this is especially true for people like senior people like Dr. Mukesh or Dr. Manmohan. The patient is already coming to you with a wad of prescriptions that they have already taken so many. So when such patients comes to us, it is very imperative that even urticaria should be evaluated very thoroughly. Make the patient lie down, maybe do a liver palpation, palpate the spleen and liver lymph nodes, including looking for any internal possible malignancy, as we know that it can present as a chronic urticaria.
Yeah, plenty of times they take urticarias and subsequently they may come up bullous pemphigoid.
But of course, fortunately, it is more in adult patients. We are talking about pediatric age group.
Pediatric, I think ALL has been mentioned as one possible condition which can present with urticaria, acute lymphatic leukemia.
Lymphatic leukemia. ALL.
Yes, can present with urticaria.
Yes.
I think very important message is that when you get senior, you tend to see the patient maybe a little faster. So if you see a patient of urticaria, that doesn't mean you see the wheels and you have made up your mind as to what you are going to do. In fact, the work starts there.
Yes, absolutely essential. I think the maximum time it takes history taking.
Yes.
And then any one of the panelists can take, there is something called as the antihistamine resistant urticaria. So did you come across in your practice, and then what do you do for those situations? Antihistamine resistant urticaria.
First of all, I have a doubt on this terminology. I won't call it antihistamine resistant. This is recalcitrant actually, which does not respond to antihistamines. It's a recalcitrant urticaria. So recalcitrant urticaria, we have the options which we have discussed just now. And depending upon the situation, in a particular situation, somebody may need Montelukast. In a particular situation, you may need cyclosporin, or if the patient cannot afford, some other alternate medications. So recalcitrant urticaria can be treated by different set of drugs, including omalizumab, but I don't think there is a terminology resistant to antihistamines.
Recalcitrant to conventional therapy. If any recalcitrant to conventional therapy of non-sedative antihistaminic, then we have an option of updosing till 4 times. You follow up with every 2 weeks. If no response, then we have a 2 ways, whether to go with the cyclosporin or go with omalizumab. So option is ours. Based on the budget, you can choose. If any urticaria which is associated with any allergic rhinitis or history of atopy, there is a role of Montelukast. And as you said, anxiolytic, any stress component is there, the doxepin.
Otherwise, reassess the diagnosis again, sir.
Pardon?
Reassess the diagnosis again.
Yes, I think that's very important. That's very. Umesh also mentioned about it, that when we are treating urticaria and the patient is not responding, it's not always that the patient is not responding and we have to check up the dose and we have to add new medicines all the time. We may be missing something. We may have to revisit our history and examination. So I think that's a very important thing.
Here I like to say that I have presented one case, I think came to Delhi and presented, in fact, one of the cases of a 3-month-old patient of urticaria. One patient was of actually mastocytosis. Cutaneous mastocytosis patient presenting as urticaria. He was going around pediatrician. Second patient was surprisingly, it's also with considered to be angioedema. It's a congenital myeloid leukemia. So congenital myeloid leukemia with leukemic deposits under the skin, especially the face and eyes. I think I still have the photographs of the patients. And this patient was going around for 3 months because pediatricians, of course, not seen by many dermatologists, but pediatricians were confusing with urticaria. So sometimes with cutaneous mastocytosis and sometimes like childhood infantile malignancies, especially hematological malignancies, urticaria can be a component.
True, absolutely.
Congenital myeloid leukemia.
CML, chronic myeloid, CML.
No. Congenital.
Congenital myeloid.
Congenital. The term is there.
Okay.
It's accepted terminology.
Published this paper, I think, no? Narasimha Rao, leukemic deposits in the skin. I think you have published this paper.
Yes, I published the paper also.
And then coming to the vitamin D talked about, and there are reports. Vitamin D supplementation will help reducing the antihistaminic requirement for the chronic urticarias. Do panelists agree on this? Especially they said it is South Indian population. I don't know why there is a report the South Indian population. Mukesh,
I think. Yeah. Okay.
Insufficiency, not deficiency. The vitamin insufficiency may be associated with because it has almost 2000 receptors in our body. So everywhere the vitamin D is, we are saying that it has a role. So and the only thing is to the intensify or activation of immune system.
I will say it like this. If I have a patient of urticaria whose vitamin D is low, I will treat that. But saying that I will do vitamin D level in an urticaria patient, I will not do.
But the vitamin D supplementation through oral is only 10% because 90% of vitamin D through come through skin, through sun. So that's why I used to give advice to my patients, always just follow rule of 12. So 12 o'clock, 12 minutes, 12 times in a day, because the vitamin D mainly comes through narrow UVB rays. UVB rays maximum 60%, which will come to the earth between 10 and 2 o'clock. So if you follow rule of 12, almost 80 to 90% of vitamin D will come to us free of cost.
Umesh, you are talking in a mathematical equation language. So I will talk of a mathematical equation only. It is only 9% of your body surface area which is exposed to sunlight in our Indian dress.
That is enough, sir. Only hands is enough to get that 80 to 90%.
Then how come the farmers who are working in the farms there, so they are also deficit of this vitamin D nowadays?
Yes.
No, because we need cholesterol as a basic element to make vitamin D in the skin. And I think that may be one factor why we find that even in, for example, Middle Eastern countries are always covered. We don't find them deficient in vitamin D as much as we are finding here now. So there's not only one question of sunlight giving you vitamin D, which is enough. I think there's more to it. Than
I think we are probably looking, probably our discussion probably more towards vitamin D and urticaria. I think probably it is not very relevant. I think that I realize that every drug has a season. I think when it was in 1980s, everybody used to prescribe vitamin C for everything. Then zinc used to prescribe for everything. I think in 2000s, I think biotin used to be prescribed for everything. Now vitamin D is prescribed for everything. So I think cyclically, I think every 10 years, like you get some drug which is as a supplement, and suddenly it goes out of race. Coming back, I don't think it has any role in directly involving with the management of urticaria.
There is a report. So I asked South Indian specially, they have said urticaria improved with the supplementation. This is a report from where I picked up the Cochrane this thing references I have seen. So that is the reason I asked. But anyway,
where I have
calcium is supposed to be definitely useful in urticaria.
Calcium, yeah.
Role of ketotifen in this urticarial. Any of ketotifen? Ketotifen.
I'm not able to hear.
Ketotifen, she is saying ketotifen.
Ketotifen stabilizers, they are proved to be of no use. They are no use. Sodium chromoglycate and then other things, mast cell stabilizers, they are of not much use as far as we were using it, but not much benefit.
I think it's mentioned only for choline some urticaria.
It is for mast cell stabilization. So they were giving ketotifen, sodium chromoglycate and all, but that is more for asthmatics rather than for urticarias. And then this is an open question to everybody. Nowadays, poor patients spend thousands of rupees, 10, 15,000 getting a food test, panel test done. So how all of you take this, whether it is required, useful, or informative, or of no use?
I will respond to this question.
Yes.
Yeah. So we all see patients coming with those reports in our chambers. Even though you feel frustrated looking at those reports, but you have to reason with the patient, because if you are dismissive about the reports, the patient may be dismissive about your opinion also. So you have to discuss with the patient. Now, I asked the patient, okay, these things have come positive and you have omitted these things. Has it helped your child? And then they say, okay, since we have done all this and it hasn't helped, that's why we are here with you. So that is where the conversation actually starts. So I tell them that if you do the test in every individual, something is going to be positive. Now, these positive reports mean nothing. These tests definitely have a negative predictive value. If something is negative, then the person is not, allergic to that particular thing. But if it is positive, it has no meaning. That's first part of my answer. The second part is, if we strongly suspect a food, we will have to omit that food. And people think that omitting the food for 2-3 days is going to improve urticaria. It's not going to happen. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks for the food elimination to work. So it's very difficult. So you should have a great conviction in the food. And for that, you have to have a very good history. The patient should give a history of repeated aggravation of the urticaria with that particular food, just not just once. Because if just once you will consider that, then every food will be stopped anyway. So if there is a history of aggravation at least 3 times, I say, okay, you omit that food for minimum 3 weeks time. And this is the test. In fact, if you look at the gold standard test of the food allergy, the gold standard test is this only. Whether you are following any RAST and all, whatever comes out, if you challenge it with the food, only then you can confirm it. So withdrawal and challenge, and again withdrawal and again challenge twice. If you do it, only then you can confirm the food allergy. So otherwise, these tests are not of any use.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it was a long answer.
No. Apart from that, to suspect food is a culprit in urticaria, any skin articarial wheal associated with the symptoms and signs of respiratory system and symptoms and signs of GIT system, which will occur within 1 hour after taking food, then you can suspect food could be a culprit. Or any skin lesions with multi-organ involvement occurs repeatedly more than 1 times. In those conditions also food is a culprit. So I said, sir said, Mukesh sir said, 2 weeks abstinence will give a clue.
Yes, and I forgot to mention that 1 hour rule is very important.
Yeah.
It will happen within minutes, maximum 1 hour. Yes.
So do you suggest any common foods which are act as a pseudo allergens which the patient may have to avoid for some time?
I will tell. So generally in adults, peanuts, tree nuts and seafood. These are 3 important area, more than 90% they are responsible. Whereas in children, especially first 3 years, apart from these 3, milk, egg, soy and wheat. So these are almost these 9 components are responsible for 90% of food is a culprit for the triggering of urticaria.
So whatever the patient's observation can be avoided. Yeah, Mukesh, please go ahead.
Unmute, sir. Unmute.
Sorry.
Mukesh, sir, you unmute yourself.
So among the pseudo allergens, there are, children are eating a lot of outside stuff. It starts from the candies and goes on to pizzas, burgers and whatnot. So what we are bothered about are the, benzoates, we are bothered about the azo dyes, which may be there. So the first advice to any urticaria patient, a chronic urticaria patient, or even an acute urticaria patient who comes, I tell them not to give any artificial food item to the child.
Exactly.
Because they will be aggravating anyway. Even if they are not the causative causation, they will be aggravating anyway.
Coloring dyes is responsible for pseudo allergy.
Yes.
Tartrazine is a common one. We shouldn't forget
And maybe
inhalants
even Ajinomoto.
These are available for inhalants also, and then we should ask the history of pets and inhalants they can cause.
Yes.
So those tests. I think sometimes you can also confirm if you have very strong suspicion. If they want confirmation, you can do individual tests instead of the whole panel. That also can be done. Where elimination is not possible, because as you said, a negative test would rule it out almost.
Negative has a predictive value 100%. Positive, you cannot rule out. So clinico-pathological correlation is very important.
Often I ask them to maintain a diary, which might help.
Yes.
Diary, okay. Diary. Avoiding and doing an oral provocative. So I think we are just finishing our time. So any comments or any questions from any panelists? Any comments regarding food?
I would like to say the closing comments of mine.
Take home message.
Urticaria in children, you are not just treating the children, but you are also expected to counsel the parents. Because the moment they have come to you as a specialist after a pediatrician, so that means already the second doctor, third doctor they are visiting, and they need maybe more time. And of course, the parent is losing the sleep because the child is not sleeping. So that factor should be considered, and probably that is a very important factor for everybody. And maybe I still feel that's one reason sedating antihistamines have a definite role, even if they are not reducing the urticaria much. If you give it under cover of another non-sedating antihistamine, they just make the child little calm, quiet, so that the whole home will become calm for at least 8 hours. So only one message is that please don't go by the pharma promotion saying that sedatives have no role. They definitely have a role in those areas where you need to make the child quiet and calm and peaceful, even for a short time.
First 6 months sedative only.
There is a question from the audience. Probiotics used in anybody?
The role of probiotics in urticaria when they are associated with atopy, there is a minimal role. Otherwise, it has no role.
Any other questions, Mr. Lakshminarayana, from the audience?
Yeah, from audience, so far you have been answering, doctor, and that's only the role of probiotic urticaria and common foods in chronic urticaria. Okay. And they more or less relevant to the food only. And other than that, there is no questions. If anybody would like to pose a question, they can very well can pose, and they can unmute and they can ask. There is a speaker, you can unmute and speak, doctor, if anybody is having doubt.
Dr. Sudesh Chaudhary on the screen, and he perhaps is itching to ask a question.
Yeah, Dr. Sudesh Chaudhary, you can ask. You can unmute and ask.
You unmute yourself first.
There is another question which has come. Ivermectin in urticarias, any role?
Ivermectin in urticaria.
Yeah.
Dr. Mukesh Girdhar, very good evening. This is doctor from Ahmedabad, Dr. Sudesh Chaudhary.
Hi, good evening.
He wants to ask ivermectin in urticaria.
Okay.
When we were students during our residency, we used to give autohemotherapy for the resistant cases of urticaria. Still, some cases where we are not getting the results, autohemotherapy do work. So that is my.
Childhood urticaria, I don't know, because adults they have been using. Childhood urticaria, I'm not sure there has been used.
Certain urticaria goes with the time, so it's the question of time. After certain time, the patient they do respond, whether you give treatment or you don't give, or they are happy with cetirizine once or twice in a week. So gradually they go away, but till then you have to contact with the patient. I think it's the natural march of the urticaria.
See, there have been articles on autohemotherapy, autoserum therapy, but whenever there has been an attempt to do it, people have felt discouraged. Unfortunately, there is no proper study on this. There was a study, multi-center study in our country only on the autoserum therapy also, but there was no control in that study. So that is why that study was, not considered significant. But as Dr. Kiran Godse says, autoserum therapy is the poor man's omalizumab. But he's not there in the panel, otherwise I would have asked him, does he give it and really see it effective? So I don't know. Anybody who uses it, only that person should comment. It will be very difficult to say anything.
Yeah. I'm using, and that's why I'm just sharing my views. In resistant cases, it do work in few patients, those who come for follow-up regularly.
I think Dr. Kiran does autologous serum testing probably rather than for treatment. He is just testing to diagnose. Maybe I hope he also does. For management also he does. I wonder if he does.
He talks of autoserum therapy. Autologous serum test is
skin test.
For the diagnosis. Injections, intramuscular injections is the autoserum therapy. That also talks about as a poor man's omalizumab.
But one thing, we got an audience of 76 people. But for that reason, I should say, in these times, please be wary of doing such things because two reasons. One, unless you should have a very, very certified blood bank kind of a department to do any blood related things. When you want to give and inject, the patient may take it as long as comfortable. The moment something goes wrong, he will actually start making a lot of trouble for us because he will start questioning the competency and the equipment which we have. So while doing such things, especially in children, please be very careful at these times.
And there is another question from the audience. Anyone of the panelists can take. They want to know the usefulness of skin prick test. Skin prick test. Urticarias.
I think they have done penicillin and drugs in the past. Prick tests. Atopic dermatitis they have used.
In the skin test, generally we have three types: the prick test and the intradermal and patch test. The prick test is only for the detection of IgE antibodies. Unless there is a history which is suggestive, the prick test is very valid, is limited. But if you suspect, as for example, any food or fruit which is a culprit, prick to prick test from the fruit to fruit. So then prick on the fruit and prick on the skin. So that will give some clue to suspect the fruit or food is a culprit.
Umesh, that is being contraindicated nowadays. Doing the food test on the skin is not advisable, because I work in one hospital, Mahavir, where they do a lot of these tests. My ultimate inference was this is of no use in chronic urticaria.
Yes, chronic urticaria.
For asthma, pollen allergies. So that point, we have done a dissertation work also, and we found that it is of no use. It may be even doing a oral observation and avoidance and oral provocation is a better test than doing a prick test.
Agree.
For urticaria, prick test has a very limited role.
Yeah, exactly.
And there is one more. The question has been said, but it is not clear. Seen lot of cases with the dental infection and urticaria.
That's what we already discussed.
Comment.
Dr. V.K. Chawla.
May I add something?
Yeah, doctor.
Pediatric age group vaccines could be one reason you can miss. You don't ask.
Egg-based vaccines are responsible if egg is a culprit for the triggering factor.
May I know what are the egg-based vaccines, Dr. Bhumesh? Dr. Bhumesh, what are the egg-based vaccines?
Varicella.
Okay.
They also have gelatin. And is gelatin.
Yeah.
In the vaccines.
Any other questions, Lakshminarayan?
Yeah, sir. I think there is no more questions, and if anybody audience would like to pose question, then you can very well.
Somebody
so
has
wait for a minute or two.
I think somebody has asked for the H. pylori. Some Dr. Sanjay Kumar.
Yeah. I told.
Yeah. So H. pylori, we believe that treatment of H. pylori doesn't eradicate urticaria.
True.
And the role in children would be, even lesser as compared to the adults. Yes. Yeah.
And somebody asked about ivermectin. So ivermectin can be given only after the age of 6 years. That should be made sure. And of course, as per weight, 200 micrograms per kg body weight. So that can be given. So it is probably as good as giving any deworming agent. And giving a deworming agent in Indian context is always welcome if it is frequency of about 6 months time, probably. But it may not directly have any value for acute urticaria. But also on contrary, probably one should not deworm. As per the old school of thought, when active urticaria is there, one should desist from deworming.
Yeah.
Because some mobility at the worm actually may aggravate the urticaria.
Aggravate urticaria, yes.
And not below the age of 5 years. So below the age of 5 years, ivermectin is not contraindicated.
Yes.
Yeah, 5 years. 5 years.
Lakshminarayan? You said 6:30 now?
Yeah.
Don't you think if the patient is having worms, then we must deworm? That initially you may get signs of aggravation. Ultimately, patient will be benefited.
No, not at the acute stage of urticaria. After controlling urticaria, you can give deworm.
You give antihistaminic for 2 weeks, then you can go for deworming agents, but not at the phase of acute.
So, shall we call it a day, Dr. Manmohan?
Yeah, so I thank really all the panelists, Dr. Rao, Dr. Abhishek, Dr. Mukesh Giridhar, a top practitioner at Delhi, very busy, I know. And then Dr. Vani, Dr. Kavita, and Dr. Bhumesh for nice presentations and good answers for the queries what we had. And I thank the guidance also for,
Cadila
Pharma for taking care of this program. And I thank you all and for inviting me also. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. Today, the end of the day, once again, remembering Dr. Umashankar, even I'm very much close to associated with him. The initial talk I could not able to because like we have to initiate and you have to start the condolence, so that I have left it. So I'm really feeling very sad about the incident which took place today, and sudden demise is a great loss to the society, and for me especially a very good friend of mine, the Dr. Uma Shankar, and I pray God and his soul is rest in peace, uh, and the webinar. So I will communicate to the family that his family should get the strength and live. And moving forward, Doctor, today's the agenda wonderful and Urticarian children and approach. So almost close to 100 doctors have been reached your knowledge and they enlightened. And thanks for all the doctors, those who have accepted our invitation for the new web platform. And
new web also worked. Lakshminarayana, new web has also worked.
Worked very well. That is really
Vani madam. Credit goes to Vani madam.
Yes, close to 100. Everybody accepted and accessed the new technology, and a special vote of thanks today, Dr. Mohan, an eminent personality. And after a long time, I could see him on the web. So thank you very much, Doctor, for having chairing this program today and moderating. Very much thankful. And thank you, another eminent personality, Dr. Narasimha Rao, Dr. Pavitra Vani, Dr. Mukesh, Dr. Kavita, and Dr. Abhishek for expert panelists and sharing their expert opinions and parted their knowledge to all the medical fraternities which are attended today. And I thank you, doctors, those who attended and made this program and successful by though the difficulty in entering into this Microsoft web. So finally they're successful and entered and learned the new technology. And I thank you, my seniors, Mr. Amit Ajmera, Vice President, and Mr. O.P. Singh, President, who has initiated and they continue this program, webinars continuously during this COVID time. And this is a very good platform to meet each other. So I thank Dr. Pratik, who has coordinated with the medicals and all medical fraternity. I thank you, my team members, Mr. Deepak Pataskar and his colleagues, Mr. Ashish and Mr. Nirmalya, for generating this platform and making this program success. I thank my sales head, Mr. D.P. Singh, and his colleagues here, all sales managers, and Mr. Raju especially and his team, and who has coordinated all the doctors and southern and western places. Thank you once again. Deepak, would you like to say something?
I want to say something.
Yeah, doctor.
I want to thank all the panelists, the moderator, Dr. Manmohan. In fact, the purpose for us is also to learn from each other. And I also learned a few things today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And Dr. Sudesh,
I would like to add, Doctor, even though
regularly attending. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Sir, I would like to have one thing just. Yeah, because every time we have go for the Zoom, but as you said, Dr. Vani is very much keen behind not to go for Zoom. So he said good thing starts always because of the ladies. So very much thanks to ma'am also. So that's why we have shifted to Microsoft Teams. And thank you so much, all the dignitaries, our moderator and panelists, and all the participants. Thank you so much on behalf of entire Cadila Pharmaceutical.
Yeah, it is intention not to have a China-based any product. That's the call has been very strongly firmly taken. So that's it. Let's exercise with a non-Chinese product.
Yeah, Lakshminarayana, you continue. You avoid Zoom and continue with this only. So initially it was a little bit trouble. Yeah, we are behind since 1 week. Created all these troubles, and thank you very much to all team Cadila, Lakshminarayana and your team, and special thanks to all the participants who have paid for 1.5 hours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
It's
so
a
much.
wonderful,
Thank you so much.
wonderful knowledge.
Dr. Bhumesh is our very part and parcel of all Cadilas, and Dr. Sudesh Chaudhary, and lot of doctors are very regular. Thank you so much from the bottom of the heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Thanks a lot.
We are ending up this program once again.
Yeah, she should close it.
మన్మోహన్ సార్ థ్యాంక్ యూ. మంచిగా అయింది సార్, చాలా బాగా అయింది. మనం 1 hour అనుకుంటే 1.5 hours అయింది. బాగా అయింది. ఆల్ పాయింట్స్, క్వశ్చన్స్, ఎవ్రీథింగ్ వాస్ కవర్డ్.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్.
1.5 hours మంచి నైస్లీ కంట్రోల్డ్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్. సో ఆల్ క్వశ్చన్స్, ప్యానల్ క్వశ్చన్స్, ఆడియన్స్ క్వశ్చన్స్ కూడా కవర్ అయినాయి. ఎవ్రీథింగ్ హెస్ కవర్డ్.
ట్రూ, అబ్సల్యూట్లీ.
రైట్ సార్, థ్యాంక్ యూ.
థ్యాంక్ యూ.
ఉదయ్ సార్ మీసాలు ఖతర్నాక్ ఉన్నాయి. చలో